John Wade from Bromford. That's not Bromford. Starting to call ourselves now. It was a kind of weird gig, this. It's like normally you go to a Hyde Park concert or something and you start with like a little band and it's their first ever gig and they're first up the road. And as the day goes on and it starts to get darker and darker, at the end you get this massive stage out and you get the Rolling Stones or Coldplay. And obviously you've had the Rolling Stones already. We're working our way backwards. So this is my first ever gig, but it's not far off. So it's all kind of surreal, cream cheese, first ever gig and I'm headlining. I had prepared something very comprehensive this morning, but I'm going to go off piece of it to try and be as quick as I can to get on some discussion. Basically, it's my version of a journey that Bromford has been on as a housing association. And there's 3 or 4 colleagues here who probably would, if they were here, would tell it differently. It's me telling a story, which is that I think Bromford is like lots of other housing organisations. Our driver was to build more affordable housing. And then, having built affordable housing, it was to manage it as well as we could, to be a good landlord. And building houses was so important that most housing associations, if you go to almost any housing association website, the first thing you'll see is, and if you met someone from a housing association and they introduce themselves, one of the first things they'll tell you is, how many houses have they got? Because that's the most important thing. And we were just the same. Getting into housing association houses is getting harder and harder. So a whole load of bureaucracy is built up around that over many years, driven by local government, national government, governments of different persuasions, policies from housing associations themselves. But at the heart of it, it's about focusing on the bad stuff. So the more needs you have, the more problems you have, the more things that you can't do, the higher up the list you go, and the greater the chance you have of actually getting one of these scarce resources. And we've collaborated in that. We have systems which are all about trying to weed out the worst excesses of potentially problem customers who might smash up our houses or cause antisocial behaviour. So what we're really trying to find is, out of this pool of people who can't do things for themselves, the people who are least able to not do things for themselves, who are least likely to cause us a problem as a landlord. Because really our business is about getting on and building more houses. And what we want to do is let our properties as quickly as we can, focus as few resources on the people as we can, and to put as many resources as possible into building more houses. Now, we do need more houses, and that is a really important thing to do, but it's not ultimately that important. About 4 years ago, I forget where, we get money from the government to build those houses. That's the short version of it. We used to get all the money, now we get less and less and less. And we used to bid for that money every few years. And about 4 years ago, we bid for a load of money and we didn't get loads of money. And it made us go through a bit of a crisis of, blimey, what are we here for? Hi, I'm John, we've got 26,000 houses. Suddenly, we haven't got any money to build any more houses, so what are we here for? So we did quite a lot of soul searching and realised that if we had any value, there's lots of people who build houses, Wimpy, Persimmon, Charles Church, whoever. So if what we do is build houses, there's other people who do it, and they do it better, quicker, cheaper than us. So it can't be building houses. It must be something to do with the people who live in them. And then we started to look at, well, hang on, what we try and do is find out all the things that people can't do, and then exclude as many of the ones with the most things they can't do as possible, because they'll be the most difficult to manage. And we've just started on a journey, and it absolutely is a start, compared with sort of Jim's slides going back to sepia and black and white and hand-drawn slides. We're just starting out. And Vicky, who sat over there, has helped design something called Tenancy Ready. So we've started asking people, what can you do? and we started asking people, where do you want to be in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? Now, we still fall back every now and again and say, oh, look, they say they want to own their own house. They're never going to own their own house. And then we have to remind ourselves, no, that's great. That's a goal, that's an aspiration. And our job is increasingly to help remove barriers. So there's lots of things that we've kind of stumbled across and worked out for ourselves that seem to tie into some of this kind of thought process or movement, or call it what you will, that's clearly global, which is quite nice to discover that there's something going on much bigger than us. So we've started to get amazing feedback from people who say things like, that's the first time anyone's asked me what I'm good at, or what I can do, or what I want to do, or where I want my family to be. And it's just, I mean, we've talked about turning the tanker. It's not, we haven't done it, but we're on the process of shifting the whole emphasis of the organisation. We've got a social networking thing internally called Yammer, which is free. You can get a pay-for version, but we've got the free one. And I'd recommend it to any organisation that's spread over lots of sites, because basically it's just people telling stories, people telling each other in the organisation what they've just done. And the way it's connected people who are out in the field, you know, literally, they might be in a field in Cirencester, with particularly the powerful people in the heart of the organisation, HR, finance, the senior people who don't generally get to see what the organisation is actually doing. Suddenly they're hearing all these stories and can engage and say, oh wow, that's amazing. And the sense of one organisation with a shared mission and purpose. I mean, I've been there 13 years, and in the last 2 or 3 years, it's felt like an organisation with one purpose. It has to an extent. I'm caricaturing because I haven't got much time, but it's come alive in a way that it never did before. And that's kind of where we are. We've wrapped this all up into a thing called the deal, which is essentially saying we want to open up a relationship with a new customer around, here is a house, and that's great, and you know you need a house because you've probably been living in temporary accommodation or sleeping on a sofa or whatever, but we want to give you and enable you to have opportunities, and we're here to help you remove barriers so that you can achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. You know, we work with loads of different people. We talk about customer journey and recognising that we're not trying to get everyone to the same place. We're trying to enable everyone to move from where they are now to closer to where they want to be. And that might be for someone going to the shops on their own, or it might be for someone eventually saving up and buying a shared ownership house, or it might be setting up and running a football club on a Saturday, or it might be going to a football club that someone else set up on a Saturday. It's a massive range of things, and it's actually quite exciting, and there's a real buzz around the place in a way that there never has been. The other bit that's interesting in picking up several things people said is our chief exec uses a slide a lot to describe the money we used to get from government to build houses with. He uses a slide of drug dealers doing a deal, and that, now we don't get that money, we see it like that. We were in crisis for about, well, not very long, but about 72 hours. Thinking, what are we going to do? We've got no money now coming from government. And then we realised, well, actually, we've got loads of assets, physical bricks and mortar assets, which we can borrow against. Now we don't have to build exactly where someone else says and build what someone else says and we're actually, it's a bit more scary and a bit more risky, but we've got much more control. And in the sort of support side, we've gone through a similar process. We used to get supporting people grant to deliver housing related support, which had to be this, by this, and we had to work like that and start here and end there. And now we're starting to experiment with how we can deliver different kinds of services and talk to different people who might want to buy them and help co-design and all the rest of it. So it's a very, very exciting place to be. Thank you.